It's a little bit after 2 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get rolling today. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This is the Inovateus Solar educational webinar series, Investing in Your Energy Future. Today's topic is myth-busting facts about sustainable solar development and recycling solar modules. My name is Tyler Kanczuzewski. I'm the Vice President of Sustainability and Marketing at Inovateus Solar, and we have Chris Stearns joining us today. He's with Cascade Eco Minerals, their National Sales Director. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tyler.
Excited to discuss with you some myth-busting topics. This is the agenda for today. If you have any questions at the end, there'll be a chat box or a Q&A box, and that's where you can ask questions. We'll probably try to get done close to 3. We'll see how many questions we have, but we'd appreciate any questions you have. So let's go ahead and get rolling here. So Inovateus Solar is based in South Bend, Indiana, and we really focus on solar development in the Midwest market. And we're doing solar with a lot of utilities, municipalities, schools, and businesses. We've done over 500 megawatts to date, and our team is growing. We just did the math this week. We actually have 390 years of employee experience. So that's a good number to see. Our mission is building a brilliant tomorrow, and it really aligns with sustainability and why we exist and why we got into solar, because we believed in renewable energy, not only as a good business model, but a way to do better for the earth and take advantage of something that shines on us every day. And our core values are peace, and really we just try to act with peace and with all of our partners and internally with our culture and with the earth. With every decision we make. So we want to talk today about some sustainable solar development and some common myths that Chris and I hear in the industry. So we thought it'd be good time to discuss some of these myths. Myth number 1 is that solar projects create a lot of landfill waste. Solar equipment is obviously really valuable, and you have to get it to a job site. And the only way to do that is things like wood pallets, cardboard, banding, shrink wrap. You need shipping material to safely get these products to the job site and get them installed. And traditionally, you work with timelines and you're trying to get the solar installed pretty quickly, and it might be easier to put that waste in a dumpster. Where at Inovateus, we're learning that we can effectively sort and separate all this waste on site, work with local regional recyclers on the logistics, and recycle 90% or more of that material. And then shipping obviously is a footprint, so we need to look for low carbon options always, but there's no added cost. We're learning that this actually adds value to the stakeholders. And it's just, let's be honest, it's the right thing to do. When we're developing solar, the last thing we want to do is send a lot of stuff to the landfill. I pulled a stat that in 2018, EPA recorded over 145 tons of construction and demolition waste was landfilled, and 600 million tons were generated. So as the solar industry is growing, we don't want to add to that. There's already enough waste going to the landfill. So how can we effectively recycle a lot of this material? We're also encouraging manufacturers of the solar equipment that we're installing to use more reusable and recyclable material and promote more circularity. There's one company that's just starting called PV Pallet, and they are focusing on a reusable pallet that's made of HDPE plastic that's recyclable over and over again. So there's new solutions coming out for better packaging. The packaging that we are using, though, all very recyclable, things like wood, cardboard, glass, metal, and plastic. Myth number 2 is that solar projects take up valuable land. Now, when you're driving around the highways, traveling around the country, you probably see more and more projects being installed in open fields or old farmland. The great thing is now there's some things you can do with solar that have been popping up. Literally, it's wildlife habitat or pollinating plants. You can plant these with your solar farms. And traditionally, the industry has been installing turf grass, and the roots don't grow as deep. But if you do pollinating plants, as you can see in the picture in the bottom right, these roots go like really deep, 4 to 6 feet, some of them. And they can even do great things like sequester more carbon. But there's just a lot of benefits to this pollinator habitat that we're learning. It's less maintenance. You don't have to mow it, or you mow it maybe once or twice in the first 3 years, and then it's less and less chemicals. So you're saving a lot of money on the maintenance. Also learning that it can increase system performance. It improves soil health and also provides stormwater management. So it's really amazing what we're learning, that you can install pollinator habitat with solar. And a term that's being thrown around is agrovoltaics. It's basically you have a solar farm. It's just you're not farming crop, you're farming power, but you're also producing some wildlife habitat. Systems are being designed much more optimally. So we're using less land and producing more power. So as the solar technology increases, we're using less land. And we've actually done solar on quite a few brownfields, and that's a common thing now in the industry. The EPA keeps track of all the brownfield listings in the country, and there's a lot of them. And we can install solar on these brownfields, which is pretty cool. You can also lease out your land, so you don't have to maintain the land while someone leases it to do solar. And then when the solar farm is decommissioned, you can decide to either return it back to farmland and you have better soil health, or you can upgrade your panels and do a new system. Myth number 3, this really is revolved more around our main topic today, is that solar project equipment ends up in the landfill at end life. Or you can put an end of life plan in place and figure out how not to send this equipment to the landfill. A lot of the solar panels last 20 to 30 years or 25 years on average. And most panels have been installed in the last 10 years. And right now we're in a solar boom. So we expect really, we're predicting around 10 to 15 years from now, there's going to be larger volumes of panels and the other solar equipment like racking inverters that'll need to be recycled. The good thing is this equipment is all very valuable. We're predicting or projecting over $10 billion of recoverable value and a ton of volume. NREL predicts over 80 million metric tons of solar equipment that'll reach its end life that needs to find a second home. The amazing thing is that 90% of the material is recyclable, and over 75% of it is glass. And sorry to throw a bunch of numbers back to back, but 95% of that solar glass is recyclable. So even if panels get damaged during construction right now, or storm damage happens, these panels can be recycled. And at Inovateus, we're already doing this. And you'll learn from Chris here shortly the great things Cascade's doing and focusing on. And there's a great association, PV Cycle, that is working with all the solar panel manufacturers on better practices and more recyclability. And the link at the bottom is a link. SIA has a national PV recycling program where they're really promoting a zero landfill of solar equipment across the country. So we have organizations that are actively working on this. I want to throw this slide in here, and this is not a myth. And this is pointing out that solar is the optimal renewable energy choice of the current era. And really it's because it produces less greenhouse gas emissions. It's more cost effective. It provides more jobs, more clean power, more wildlife habitat. I think that equals more sustainable. And you see these graphs here at the bottom. On the bottom right, the price of solar has come down immensely, and the volume of installations have come up. So the pricing of solar has gotten very competitive versus our traditional fossil fuel sources. And the greenhouse gases emitted from solar energy and things like wind energy are way less than coal or natural gas or some of our fossil fuels, as you see from Shannon McArdle from Harvard, put the graph on the left. So the good thing is solar can be done sustainably, and it is sustainable. And it's time now to pass it over to Chris, and he's going to dive in, talk about some myths on solar module recycling. So Chris, go ahead, take it away.
Great. Well, thanks, Tyler. I appreciate it. I appreciate you all being here. Good afternoon or good morning, as the case may be. So I'm going to launch into some solar module recycling. I'm the National Sales Director here at Cascade Eco Minerals, and it's an exciting place to be. So to give you some background on who we are, Cascade Eco Minerals is a division of Dilubic Specialty Glass. And Dilubic, like a lot of other American companies, started in a garage, the family garage, in 1932. So on the tail end of the Depression, this family business started collecting glass. And in the 90s, it really saw a renaissance in terms of what they were processing, because they were capable of doing CRT, the old television and computer monitor screens, as well as automobile windshields. And both of those streams of material require some unique proprietary processes to actually extract those minerals safely and effectively. And so solar modules are a great fit for us in the sense that we have this unique capability to develop the machinery, the processes, and the training for our staff to take what is kind of a complex assembly in a solar module and separate it efficiently and effectively and do so quickly. And our facilities are ISO certified, and we carry an R2 recycling certification as well. And these photos kind of show you these massive piles of minerals, this glass that we've ground up that we then recombine and sell on to the market. And just to give you an idea, these are some of our locations. This location shown in the Pacific Northwest, we're actually in the process of determining where this is going to be. I personally live in Portland, Oregon, and so it'd be great if it was in my backyard, but it's either that or over the river from me in Vancouver, Washington, and that's dictated somewhat by our downstream partners who will be buying those minerals from us. And then just jumping right in here to the myths, just kind of following up on where Tyler started. The first myth number 4, recycling by reuse versus recycling by disassembly. There's a bit of a presence in this industry in the sense that reuse really is the first step of this process. A lot of us were taught as we were growing up the reuse, reduce, recycle premise, that slogan, and that really still remains true. If these modules are viable for reuse or refurbishment, it does not make sense to disassemble them if they can find a home somewhere else. And so there are a number of companies out there that are offering this service and will often either take modules for free or even pay customers for their modules, which, as a array owner, that's a great premise. But it's kind of clouded things in a sense, and it dovetails with the next slide in that there is an inherent cost to this service. So myth number 5, recycling solar modules is a free service. And we get this a lot, again, because customers have been approached sometimes by other companies, and not to say that those other companies are doing anything underhanded. They're offering fair market value for modules that still have viable lifespan in them. But when modules have been damaged by storms or by fire, or we are seeing some come out of the field for just end of life where they're not really producing enough energy to remain in the field. That's where we come in and we do this whole disassembly process. And there's machinery that's proprietary that we are designing and building in-house in many cases. And then the processes themselves and the training and the staff that goes into completing those processes all has an expense. And so we are not able at this point to offer the recycling to, the actual mineral stage as a free process, but by coming to you directly, our intent is to keep that price as low as we possibly can and make it really a viable option versus the alternative, which is throwing them in the landfill. And so if it costs money, why not just throw them away? And I threw in kind of a classic photo here. That's one of the early Bell Labs modules and a guy looking very stylish. So anyway, why would we pay to recycle them? And really, there's a couple of reasons here. And obviously, it's in my best interest if you pay me to recycle modules, but it's more than that. It's that landfill space is finite. And if we're throwing these modules in a landfill at any quantity, over time, there is definitely potential for the materials within the module to leach out into the soil and ultimately into the water table. And there's things, the lead solder, all these things that are in these modules, they're going to go somewhere. And so to limit the public outcry of, opponents of solar who've been pointing to this for years as a known issue, as well as the environmental impact, a lot of us are in this industry really to benefit the earth as opposed to be a detriment to it. And so this is one way that we can really put our money where our mouths are and say, we are not throwing these away. So what does this recycling process look like? And really, this is an oversimplification, but essentially we get in pallets of modules. We evaluate the modules from each batch that a customer sends to us. And if there's any potential for reuse, say we get a batch of modules in from an array that's being decommissioned in favor of a new buzzword I've been learning, repanelization, where they're upgrading the wattage of a given array, and some of those modules are still going to be viable. We can offer through partners that we work with a cash settlement in those cases. But to get back to it, we evaluate each module, we mark it for the recycling process. And then this third picture here of the hand holding this sort of gritty material, that's actually not solar glass. We didn't have a good photo at the time I made this presentation, but solar glass as it's processed actually comes out almost snow white. And so we get this mineral compound. We combine those minerals that we get from the solar glass with other minerals from other streams of glass waste. We're able to sell those on to manufacturers who are able to use that material that they've ordered, that specific recipe that we make for them, into new products. And so some of those products, a good example is glass road beads. And it's something I really didn't know about before I came to work here at Cascade. But as you're driving down the highway at night, these little tiny glass road beads, they are sprayed, just as shown here, onto the paint lines that you see on the highway. And through refraction, your headlights reflect those little glass beads and you're able to see the paint color beneath them. And so that's what you're seeing on the highway at night. Huge industry in the United States. Fiberglass. This is kind of the most bland fiberglass manufacturing photo you're likely to see, but it's a way of saying that we take these proprietary chemical mineral blends and sell them to manufacturers that make all sorts of fiberglass products, from insulation to, things that are being made into boats and into aerospace items. Fiberglass is sort of ubiquitous in manufacturing, and it's another common downstream supply for us. And then a common question, what are we doing with the metals? And really, we're working very closely with smelters at our various regional locations to separate out all of the valuable materials from the metals that we're extracting in our processes. And then the aluminum, tin, copper, lead, other materials are being sold back as commodities into the open market and to industrial partners that we have. And then ultimately, really what we like to see, and kind of what a lot of us have been talking about in terms of the circular economy, is we work really closely with float glass manufacturers like Guardian and Corning, and they are making brand new tempered glass front sheets for these solar modules. And so in many cases, material that started out life as a solar module gets to continue life as a solar module, which is really what all of us have been talking about since we started down this road. So we actually are doing that even now today. And then as far as capacity goes, Delubic Specialty Glass in 2020 processed 500,000 tons of material. Now, it took me some time to try to get my head around that, coming from solar distribution, where a truckload of panels was, oh, great, we're selling some modules today. this is a lot of material, and only 5% of that in 2020 was actual solar modules that we processed. And we're talking still millions of pounds. And so it's kind of a roundabout way of saying we have a tremendous capacity to process glass, and we can scale that capacity up as time goes by. So as the years progress and we really start to see modules be decommissioned that are truly at end of life, we have almost limitless capacity to handle that material. So again, with another West Coast facility, we've talked about the one in Portland. We have discussions in the works for years down the road to increase our capacity on the West Coast. And that is our intent, is to build up as demand increases. And then I threw this slide in there, the future of solar recycling. This is sort of a famous photo. These are wind turbine blades. And it's not me trying to, throw a shot at the wind turbine industry, not at all. It's rather to say that these were not able to be recycled, and these are them being buried in a field in the Midwest. And so, that little Tonka truck in the top right corner, that's actually a full-size excavator pushing dirt over these wind turbine blades. And I bring this up, this image stuck with me because we in the solar industry are not at a point yet where we are facing this, but it's starting. And to avoid something like this, to set up the infrastructure now to limit the effects of this black eye on the wind turbine industry, we can take steps now. And by having conversations like this one with all of you, to limit the effects that this has on our industry, and to do really the right thing in terms of limiting the amount of material that's just being thrown away and essentially wasted in landfills. We can recover those minerals and make them into new modules and into other products. So that's basically it in the simplest terms. And I appreciate you all taking the time to be here with us today. And now we're going to open up, if you have any questions and want to open up the question and answer field, go right ahead. Now's the time.
Well done, Chris. And yeah, please ask questions. You can either go to the Q&A tab or the chat box, and we'll try to grab them from either location. And we'll spend some time here answering some questions, but this is recorded, and we'll be posting this on YouTube, and we'll be posting it on our websites, and Inovateus will also be sending the email out with the recording. So if you have to jump off now, no worries, it'll be recorded. But we have some question prompts, some things Chris and I wanted to ask each other, but we thought we could start with your guys' questions if we get some rolling in. Chris, I think we can probably both keep an eye on the questions, because I know some will probably come in through the chat tab. And sure. Then I see one here on the Q&A that is, Tyler, what is the panel height for pollinator projects? Meaning, do plants ever shade the panels? That is a good question. Because you definitely don't want to install the solar panels close to the ground and have a pollinator habitat grow tall and shade the panels. So typically you can do around 30 inches of clearance. Basically the bottom panel needs to be off the ground, somewhere in the ballpark of 30 inches. And if you do that, you're not really gonna deal with much shading. Also, pollinator habitat can involve a ton of different plants, and basically you're trying to plant native plants or natural plants that establish over time. Some establish quickly, some over time, and you're going to have to watch out for some invasives, like a maintenance company or the company planting would help watch out for the invasives, obviously. But essentially, you're going to pick a seed mix that has a height restriction that, let's say you're at 30 inches off the ground, we'll plug that in and make sure it's a seed mix that's used so that it doesn't grow above 30 inches or maxes out about there. And then you just keep an eye on it, and that might be a little bit of maintenance throughout the year. But we're finding actually you can install panels up to 36 inches off the ground, the bottom clearance, and it doesn't really add much price in your material or in your labor, because when you're installing solar panel racking, you already have to go into the ground pretty deep. So having an extra 6 to 12 inches or so lift off the ground, it doesn't add too much material. So that's a good question.
Great. And then jumping in, Beth North, you had the question, have there been discussions with our new Secretary of Transportation about the recycling application for stripes on our highways? To my knowledge, I don't know that Cascade Eco Minerals has put that forward. It is an interesting point. It's something I'm going to jot down a note. We certainly could run it past them. I'm not sure if I'm going to get Mayor Pete's ear, but I certainly would love to, make sure that they're aware that this is something that is a downstream resource for us in solar recycling. Moving on to Philip, your question, transportation costs for old panels could be a significant cost. Will recycling be distributed across the country? And you've nailed a key thing that Kurt, my boss, and I discuss on a very regular basis is how we're going to get modules to our facilities for processing, minimizing both the cost and the environmental impact of that transportation. And so your answer is that yes, in the long term, we are definitely looking at additional plants to minimize how far we're having to transport any given batch of solar modules. Right now, we have some aggregation processes that are making it possible for us to fill truckloads just as full as we possibly can. But it's an important point. So yes, it's coming. It's just a matter of us ramping up to meet the demand. And frankly, one of the things that we get a lot of is that, why don't you just build a plant here? And we would love to, but a lot of our processes in terms of reselling those minerals involves other streams of material beyond just solar glass to get other mineral forms. And so for us to really justify a facility, which is a tremendous expense, we need both downstream partners that are regionally close to it, as well as other streams of material to pull from. So it's a complicated equation there, and it's something we're always working on. Let's see.
Yeah, there's how much solar energy is used in reprocessing the solar panel components. That's a pretty good question. Do you guys have any data on that yet?
I don't know. Maybe Kirk can speak to it, but I don't know that we've actually quantified. And it's something we really should do, because it's a question I suspect will come up more and more as time goes on. I don't know if we've quantified it per module, but it's something we could certainly look at and publish at some point later on. Let's see.
So we have, forgive me if I'm accidentally missing anybody's, but we have from Daniel Shoemaker. He's with West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. The statistic that 95% of solar panels are recyclable was shared. That suggests the material is already pretty close to closed loop. Is there a need for design specs or policy that would encourage recyclability of panels? Sounds like that might already be designed into it already. Chris, feel free to answer this one. I know, the industry is working on like an eco label, so that helps you choose more sustainable or eco-friendly material when you're installing the solar equipment. I know things like that are in the works. Do you have anything to add?
I mean, it's an interesting point, Daniel, and really there probably are some things that could improve the recyclability factor. We have kind of taken a different approach in terms of recycling what is out there currently, because a lot of the technology we're seeing, really what we should be seeing is the early stuff. It's 15, 20 years old at this point, if not older. And so sure, we could certainly look at improvements. And I think PV Cycle in Europe is actually looking at ways to improve the recyclability of modules, but that will be an impact that we feel much further down the road. So it's a good point. It's something that I think a lot of people are looking at right now to improve that ability to recycle these panels.
There was a question, what percentage of panels that you handle are truly at end of life versus reusable?
This is a good point. A lot of what we see in terms of what, for example, what's coming in from distributors and contractors are those 1 or 2 pallets of dusty modules that have been broken in transportation or on the job sites. We see a fair amount of that we consider end of life, because there's no amount of Windex that's going to save a module that fell 30 feet off of a roof. So in terms of the percentages, I would say that right now today in 2021, we're probably right around 50-50 in the sense that we see a lot of manufacturing scrap, we see a lot of initial installation scrap from large ground mounted arrays, and then we see a lot of weather events and burn damage type of projects where the modules really are not reusable. And then in many cases, when we run into a project, for example, if they're doing a repanelization effort, more often than not, we'll look to one of our partners who's in the reuse side of the industry to augment the recycling costs for any modules coming off of that site that actually are not able to be refurbished for whatever reason. And then through that process, the end user, the array owner, spends significantly less on recycling. So it kind of works out for everyone. And so I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'd say 50-50 is probably a pretty fair bet for end of life versus reusable today.
Question from Philip Kruer. Do you change panel orientation to reduce shading impact? I'm guessing you mean in terms of like the pollinator habitat, but typically they're installed portrait, and sometimes they're installed in landscape. I mean, typically, in most of the United States, you're going to point the panels to the south at a certain degree angle, but portrait versus landscape doesn't matter too much. Sometimes it matters on the racking that's used, because more and more we're using tracking technology, and you have to install the panels a certain way to the racking so you can track the sun. That's a good question. Jeff Spees. Hey, Jeff. Thanks for calling in. He says he wants to talk to you, Chris. He's working with Calcea. He's I think he's still with NABCEP too. So yeah, you guys should connect there.
We'll definitely talk, Jeff. It's good to see you. I see someone had asked the question, how much does it cost to recycle a panel today and in the future? And this is a great question. So right now, today, anywhere, we're doing it based on the pounds, the weight of the material that's being sent into us. And you could guess for, depending on the format of the panel, anywhere, we see 36 cells on up to 96 cells and some other oddballs, but typically you're looking at $14 to $18 per module. And I think your question is front loaded in the sense that it's likely that over time, competition and just improving our resources, our abilities, that price will come down over time. But right now we're trying to function at a very minimal margin to make this attractive, to make people actually want to do this versus throwing things in the landfill. Because ultimately, if it comes down to a financial decision alone, and unfortunately that's the case often, right now landfill is very inexpensive. And so, regardless of the moral implications there, the implications on your checkbook are significant. And so we're trying to lessen that gap right now.
What are, looks like from Crow, I don't know, Chris Crow, what are some keys in the end of life plans you are drafting? So Inovateus, it's really handling the logistics of removing the equipment and then shipping them to a recycler. And Cascade is our main partner right now. So it would be working with Cascade on a plan to remove and ship the materials, and then work with the system owner or the stakeholder there on what they want to do in terms of, do they want new solar? Do they want to use the equipment a little bit longer? Because at 25 years, the equipment might still be 80% efficient or a little less, and you have the option to keep the equipment running a little bit longer. But at that point, better technology will be available, so you'll have that option. But it's really just a logistical plan, and working with our customer on the specifics of that hey, Inovateus plans to be in business when we need to remove this system, and we'll be here for you, and work on the logistics, and work with a company like Cascade to recycle a lot of material.
And then Jonathan Zebel, sorry if I mispronounced your name, but is there a point where the disassembly process will be automated or low cost enough that the raw material value will allow no cost recycling of larger solar arrays? And so eventually that, despite the fact that we are making money doing this, yes, that is the hope, is that ultimately that material will have enough value and there will be enough of it, because really our business is in volume. We're looking for tons and tons of material to justify the expense. And so ultimately, as the real, wave of modules starts to come out of the field, and we've had discussions about when this really started, but say if the delineation point is 2006, we still have roughly 10 years before those modules hit their 25-year life expectancy, or at least their warranty. And so by that point, will it be possible to have low or no cost recycling? It very well may. But I can tell you that as of right now, today, if we get a very large array that's being decommissioned for whatever reason, we can often work with the players involved to minimize the cost and sometimes come in lower than, what we would call retail pricing, but there still is an inherent cost to this today.
Great. You answered this question at the top. What distance is economically viable for drawing end-of-life modules? You answered that, right?
I touched on it. I didn't name a specific distance. And it's one thing that comes up very often for us. And really, the way we like to work with customers is we have the locations that I showed earlier in the presentation, and we're kind of fairly well represented around, this country. We will typically charge an end user freight or have customer pay freight to our nearest location. And then if we need to shift it to another location based on a given facility's capabilities, we will absorb that cost to limit the cost to the end user, because obviously the logistics of this right now, we need to try to keep things as competitive as possible and make things attractive for customers to recycle materials. So there isn't a set distance. There are parts of this country that are underserved that we're working on right now of ways to minimize that cost, but it's a good question and something we're working on actively.
TJ Kanczuzewski, which is my brother, he's the CEO of our company, Inovateus Solar, asked, in our opinion, how the panel manufacturers are doing right now in terms of end of life planning, recyclability. Chris, you might have more input than me on this, but I know First Solar is in Ohio, and they actually have their own recycling plant. So they're trying to help with some of that volume. They have a big volume of panels out there, so I don't know if they're able to take all of it, but I know they're trying to recycle some of it themselves, which is good. Maybe that could be part of it too, is the manufacturers, helping. They probably won't be able to recycle all of it, and that's where you guys come in, like a company like Cascade comes in. I know that's one area, they might be able to improve, but yeah, any other thoughts you had on that?
Sure.
Tyler, this is Kurt Spivey.
Hey, Kurt, everybody, this is Kurt Spivey. He's the CEO of Cascade. Join us for the Q&A session for some backup. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up a little bit with what you've added about First Solar. First Solar was required to recycle their solar panels because they have cadmium telluride in their modules, and they have a leach filter pressing process to recover their cadtel, and cadmium telluride is a carcinogen, and it's a real problem out there. So that's why they had to step up and recycle their own modules. They don't recycle anybody else's modules. And actually, they're only an hour from one of our facilities. And so we end up with the glass from their process. Their main process is to remove the hazard, the cadtel.
Okay, so, yeah, thanks for that. And glad you guys are supporting them as well.
Yeah, we work together with them. And as far as the manufacturers go, we currently right now deal with pretty much all of the top tier manufacturers directly from their factory waste across this country. Weekly basis, we see all of the factory waste and deal with their bad laminates and cell material. And so a prior question Chris took as far as how can we get this to a cost neutral or a lower cost process. We do work we have some nice downstreams in what we're doing with the full separation of what's in the solar panel, which is the hazard part of the panel is the tin lead bus bar and tin lead wire and solders and some selenium that's in the solar cell material. And we have a really nice solution for that where we actually convert it all back into raw material. And so, it is our goal. And I think Chris touched upon volume. Volume is a very key thing. So we take each project just like a fingerprint, and we review each project and do what we can to keep our costs down and provide the service. So
That's great.
I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt.
Thanks, Kurt. And then touching on Daniel Schoonmaker's question, could you hazard a guess on shrinkage breakage that might occur during a typical installation? I think it's going to vary significantly, whether it's residential or commercial, and sort of the specs on a given project. I do know that some of the larger arrays that I've had discussions with on their initial installation waste, they're guessing at 1 or 2%. So that may or may not apply to your situation. I'm sorry, I can't be more definitive than that. I don't know, Tyler, have you got an input on that?
No, I'd say that's a good assessment. And we've had plenty of jobs that are less than 1% of, damaged panels from a contractor installing them or, driving them around site and, something happens and a panel gets broken. But, somewhere in the ballpark of 1%, I'd say would include shipping, the contractors handling the panels during installation, as well as like if there's any defects like in the panels that need to be like replaced. So somewhere in that 1% mark, I would agree.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to?
Let's see. Are there specific recycling guidelines for the solar and waste management industry? This is a really important question, and it's something that is actively being discussed. So I said earlier in the presentation that we have an R2 recycling certification, and this is something that's an industry-specific certification. And one of the discussions that's being had right now at that level is whether or not R2 is going to be separated into kind of two streams, whether it's going to be refurbishment and then actual recycling by disassembly. And so that's something that there may be a more specific recycling guideline in the near future, just because everybody sees this wave of material coming. It's probably important to separate definitions of different kinds of recycling. So right now there is sort of a sketchy version of that, in the sense that it's not really fleshed out. It's being fleshed out though actively.
Awesome. Looks like we have a comment from Tris Gower. TJ, just a note, and not related to recycling, but importance, beneficial reuse of a solar grid on a Superfund site or a brownfield is monumental, as in the case of a Depew project. Just for those that don't know, it's a project, pretty big project that's about to happen in Illinois. There would be no other use for the property. And if you did wind or some type of other installation, it would likely penetrate the fiber membrane. So the solar worked on that one and said it was a win-win. Totally agreed there. Thanks, Tris.
Nice. Touch on, I guess Beth has another question. Are your current proposals including, or are the requests for proposals you're now prepping for taking the end of life and ongoing maintenance, et cetera, being included? I'm not sure that I understand. Tyler, do you understand? Am I missing something?
Yeah, it looks like if in our current proposals with our customers are
I see. Sorry.
Yeah, the request for are we now prepping and taking the end of life? Yeah, so that information or that language is being put into our contract language and our proposal language that we plan to help. In Inovateus, we already do O&M and work with a lot of our customers on maintaining the site. We keep track of the monitoring data, how the system is performing, and then the real maintenance, which is more related to vegetation, and making sure there is no shading or things of that nature, or if it's pollinator habitat, making sure it's growing right. But yeah, it's a good question. Can you tell us more about the training of contractors for zero waste? And I think it's really just about communication there. Like Inovateus, since it's a big initiative for us to do zero waste construction initiatives, and that basically means we're trying to recycle as much packaging and shipping material as possible. If we have to throw a teeny bit of waste out, that's understandable, but it's really about communication with our labor teams that we hire to actually do the mechanical installation or do the electrical, that we want to be a zero waste site and strive for zero waste, and which means we have to do some separation. We already have to take, or the workers already have to take materials, historically to a dumpster. And now we are putting more dumpsters on site that are for recycling, and we mark the dumpsters or the receptacles. And they have to spend a little bit of time, or we have to spend a little time and educate that here are the different streams we're going to be dealing with on site. This is where the cardboard goes. This is where the pallets go. This is where the plastic goes, and so on. So it's definitely nothing like rocket science. It's just getting into the weeds and spending a little extra time on the sorting and separation, and just getting everyone to be patient in that process of, it might add you a little bit of time here and there, but we're going to save money because we're recycling this material, and sometimes people are coming to our sites for free and helping us remove, where if you're filling up dumpsters and having a Republic or a waste management company haul waste to the landfill, there's a charge every time that happens. So the more companies you can get to help you recycle, the more you're saving money. So what we're finding out, right now it's close to a wash, this zero waste construction initiative. It adds a little bit more time, a little bit more labor, but it saves you money in hauling. So in some situations we're actually saving enough money where we're putting more money in our pockets versus kind of being a net wash.
Tyler, can I add to something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've entered into a national contract with Waste Management. Funny, as you mentioned that. And we talked about many of the bullet points that you just laid out. And they're also dealing with that and how at their landfill levels, as well as project levels, how to take care of anything that might be related to solar waste and have it come to us. And I don't know.
Did we lose them a little bit?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, Kurt.
Of all solar modules, we have zero waste. I just wanted to point that out. I don't know whether I heard Chris say that or not, but we don't as of last year, we've completed the final piece of the puzzle, and we have 100% recycling now. So
great.
Thanks, Kurt.
And then Steve and Tyler, I might need your help on this, but CadTel is still currently being used, but just in, as far as I understand it, the first solar modules, they have sort of a proprietary cell structure where they're still very competitive, but they've more or less been forced to be in the recycling industry because of their unique heavy metals composition, this cadmium telluride. So it's not so much that it's been replaced, it's just really only used in one specific brand, being First Solar.
Yeah, First Solar. And it's a type of thin film, and there's some other small manufacturers that are doing thin film, but it's still pretty dominant worldwide that silicon is the main component, right? Chris and Kurt.
Yeah, no, I was going to say it can't be that easy, but I think it is that easy of an answer. I think it is just as a silicon wafer, Steve, is what's replacing the CadTel in this case.
Awesome. We got a lot of questions answered there. If anybody wants to squeeze another one in, feel free. We're going to try to wrap up close to 3, so we're right on schedule. I've really enjoyed the discussion today. It's definitely been a hot topic, and it's nice to be to open the book and discuss this some of these challenges, but they're great opportunities, and great opportunities to provide more jobs and more infrastructure to handle these challenges.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys, Inovateus, putting this on and giving us this platform to talk to all of you who were kind enough to join us today, and really just trying to plant the seed that we're doing this right now today. We're recycling solar modules, and we're doing everything we can to grow our influence on the industry. And I welcome any questions, inquiries, whatever else might come to mind as time goes forward.
Absolutely. And our emails are here. So if you guys want to reach out direct, feel free. And like I said earlier, we'll have a recording that will be available. We'll be emailing it out, and then you can go to YouTube. We'll probably be posting it there as well. So I think that's a wrap. Really appreciate everybody logging in today. We'll keep you informed on future webinars. We're going to try to do 3 more this year. We try to do 1 every quarter. Chris and Kurt, thank you guys very much. Look forward to working with you this year. And yeah, let's do it sustainably.
All right, great. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you,
and yeah, have a good rest of your day.
Great. Thank you, everybody.